Still there, Drew?
I am. Yep. I'm just on mute.
Okay.
I wasn't sure if you can do an intro or something.
No fanciness like that here. How you doing?
What? I'm great. Thank you
How
for
is
having me on.
Oh no, it's my pleasure. So I saw on your guys' social feed that the tree is in full momage right now.
Oh yeah, it is. It's gorgeous, Dave.
Oh man. That's
Wish you were here to see it.
is it did you have Sano-san come through? Was he doing a little work in the garden recently?
Yeah, he was. He does a year-end maintenance, one in the summer and one at year-end, to kind of coincide with the Gion Matsuri, and then in the summer, and then Oshogatsu, New Year's festival kind of thing. And so the garden has to look pretty for both of those major occasions. The problem with our garden, though, is the momiji it's a late bloomer. So he was here ready to do all the maintenance, and it was still like green, no real autumn leaves going on. So he gets up there and shakes all the dead leaves off, but there was no dead leaves to shake. So he was just kind of wildly gesticulating up in
Okay.
the tree,
I
which was cool.
I forget myself. I should also introduce everybody who's listening here today or checking out on the channel or whatever else. This is Drew Wallin of Garden Lab, who's founded this business co-op event space in Kyoto. Dear friend of the podcast and mine, going many years back. So thank you. Yeah, we're doing like a second introduction for you, but thank you for being on.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for having me, man. And hello, everyone.
So
Where my manners, didn't introduce myself at all. Just launched into the minutia of like momiji leaf wrangling, which is what most of my life is generally.
So I'm kind of curious. I'm looking at your website here, and do you guys like the main shot is if anybody wants to check this out, it's also gardenlabkyoto.com. You can check it out there. Are you guys like the shot that you got, whoever took this, it's fantastic. Are you going to update that, like have a cycling seasonal shot? Is it because it's winter now that you guys have it like that? Or is this the shot?
You just mean on the landing page?
Yeah, on the landing page where it's like English or Japanese and it's got like the
Yeah.
beautiful momage kind of in, fall winter time.
Yeah, that's right. So that matches the season currently. And we do sort of periodically update the site with basically whatever season it is.
That's cool. That's
Because
cool.
really this is more than one of the really common Japanese maples that goes bright red, fiery red, and is that really beautiful autumn color. This one actually stays yellow for quite a while, which is cool. It actually has this really like golden warm environment in the garden. Um, and so we want to show that off basically. So that's on the landing page right there. It's a bit of a unique autumn color. But yeah, no, once the spring comes along and the bright green of like the new leaves starts making an appearance, that'll be what the landing page is. Because really that's where this tree shines is actually in like the spring and summer months when it's like that really verdant green canopy over the garden. So
Oh, right on. What's the what event? I think, you guys are always doing events. It looked like you had live music there recently. Was that going on?
yeah, that was sort of a trial thing. You've been here, so you know very well. But for those who haven't come by yet, it's sort of like a courtyard area, but we do have neighbors on either side. And in Kyoto, that's kind of a big deal, is making sure the community harmony is going well. And so we haven't really flexed it too much by making too much noise or have like basically shutting down our events pretty early. But this was kind of a new trial. We're going to be doing a concert series next year. And so we did kind of a test run last month at our event. In a couple of days, oh no, sorry, in about a week, exactly 1 week from today, we'll be doing an actual concert, a couple of sets in the evening in the garden, and we're really looking forward to that. It's kind of our first foray into this, and everyone, all the other tenants and the community seems really excited. So hopefully that'll be a good turnout. Of course, with Corona, a good turnout means, very few people, and so we're kind of restricting seating. So it'll be like a reservation only kind of system, but hopefully next year things will be better and we'll be able to have, we'll pack this courtyard and have some cool acts here. That's the goal.
That's cool. Yeah, I definitely I don't even live there, but I do know Japan generally with like the noise concerns, and I know that Kyoto is like a hyper realization of that kind of living style. So I was amazed actually you guys were able to do that at all. It was a surprise to me.
Yeah, I think especially in Kyoto because it's an ancient city, but
Mm-hmm.
it's an ancient, dense city as well. So these kind of rules of not being too loud, being considerate of your neighbors are incredibly important to maintain. So we've been really good this year. Like I mentioned, we do events, but we usually shut them down at like 9 p.m. at the latest, or
Yeah.
maybe a little bit later than that. So I think we've earned some goodwill. So we're now like finally able, after a year of operation, stepping very quietly and be very, uh, what's the word? Um, Kind of ducking our head when we see our neighbors a little bit
Yeah,
in
yeah.
show of deference. I think we're finally ready to start opening up the potential of the space, which is exciting, man. It's been a long time.
Yeah, that's what you just made me think of it now. Like you talked about how dense it is in Kyoto, and everybody would think like that's Tokyo, right? Tokyo is really really dense, and it's true. Except again, I always return to this: the building restrictions in Kyoto define that they can only go to a certain height, right? That's correct. I got this right. Like
Yeah, that's
building.
right. It depends on where you are in town, but definitely there are a lot of places like that.
And so I'm thinking as a result of that, it probably means that when you still, like you said, it's still incredibly dense. It would almost be more dense than somewhere like Tokyo because they can't go up. So the density has to be contained within that like squatter, like shorter space in terms of height.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it compares to Tokyo, but yeah, definitely like I think the average is really high because houses here are quite small. There's like a lot of row houses and alley, like laneway houses and stuff. So any available space is kind of like juiced to the maximum
Yes.
to be able to just squeeze in these tiny homes everywhere, which is cool because I love tiny homes, so I'm really into that. But
Yes. Okay.
and I think critically though, it doesn't actually feel that as dense. It's a lot more human scale, so there's not these towering skyscrapers everywhere.
Yeah.
You can kind of walk down roads, and you maybe there's like narrow streets and narrow alleys and stuff, but they somehow remain charming because it's all human scale. It's not. It doesn't loom as much, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking to my kids in class. The word towering. You know, nothing is towering over you there. I'm my own Googler, so I picked it up. 2,229.6 persons per square kilometer. And then if we go Tokyo, I'm curious.
Yeah, it's 6,150.
Oh boy.
I'm on it too.
Okay. So
I think
it's
I
yeah.
wonder if that's deceptive though, because Kyoto, actually, the city of Kyoto extends way up into the mountains.
All
Like
right.
one of the wards of Kyoto goes way up there, so it might not be totally representative. I'd be
Oh,
curious about that.
interesting. Have
Answering
you
the questions that people want to have answered
yes, the burning
here on
question.
the podcast.
um, have you listened to any good podcasts recently? We'll do podcasts on podcasts here. Meta. I'm
Oh,
curious.
sure, yeah. Yeah, I'm a really what's the word? Eclectic
Mm-hmm.
podcast listener, I think. I listen to quite a big range
Okay.
of stuff. Um, but one that I've really enjoyed recently is do you know Duncan Trussell? Have you heard of that guy?
Yeah, he's quite. It's funny. It's like every single YouTube video I see of him, it's always like da 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 da, and of course psychedelics were involved. That's like the
Yeah,
tagline to everything I see of his.
yeah, exactly. No, so I heard of him first off of Joe Rogan's podcast,
Okay.
and it's funny how you sort of like gravitate on some of those gateway podcasts. You'll like gravitate towards some of those guests and then follow their stuff more closely. So that's kind of how I've been with him,
Yeah.
as well as Tom Segura. He and his wife have a podcast called Your Mom's House,
Mm-hmm.
which is really great. And then, kind of on the other end of the spectrum, a bit more introspective stuff. I have Malcolm Gladwell has a podcast called Revisionist History, which I
Okay.
really like.
Has he done? He does the like outliers and like these sort of like curious non-fictional books, right? They're like, I don't, it'd be
Yeah.
bad to call them pseudoscience because he does research the topics, but they're sort of like, it's like he focuses on an element of something that is interesting and scientific but not generally covered usually.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think even I don't want to butcher it, but the tagline of revisionist history, I think, is like looking at the neglected or overlooked parts of things which are interesting. That's something to that effect, where basically like history's written a certain way, but that leaves out a lot of really important details. So he'll like one of them from the last season, what he was looking at um, the Allied Air Force commander in World War II.
Okay.
Um, I should say American, maybe not Allied, but he basically oversaw the bombing of Japan. So it's like this horrible, tragic, total war scenario of atrocity, but like what made that guy that way? And so it goes back into his upbringing and stuff, and why the Air Force was different from the Army and how they had to analyze problems differently. And it was like this entirely new discipline because they hadn't had planes for all that long. So anyway, it was is really really interesting. So he kind of digs into like the what he perceives to be like the more interesting human stories. I happen to agree. I think he's a fantastic. Is he a journalist, author? It's hard to say. He kind of is, like you said, it's nonfiction, so he's maybe kind of in between. But and then another one that I've been listening to, which I really really enjoy, is called "Settling the Score,"
Okay.
and this is just like pure music nerd uh, uh, content. But basically, there are these two guys, and they analyze film score. And I don't know what you like to listen to when you're really focused and doing work, but
Mm.
I listen to a lot of film score. I don't know why. It's just always really appealed to me.
Like what do you
And
listen to?
oh, I mean, the one that I listen to probably like once a week minimum is like the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy. It's man, it's
Awesome.
exceptional. It's so good. Howard Shore's the best. Shout out Howard Shore, Canadian boy. Anyway, but also I listen to a lot of game score. So like for instance, oh, we were talking about Faster Than Light the other day. That's a great score. Ben Prunty. Shout out Ben Prunty.
That's so cool, man. Yeah, I feel like it's uh it's one of these things that if you're like a true connoisseur of games, that you love that element of the games. And I feel like the production that's gone more and more into these, the level of music in game soundtracks is insane. Like some of the best music being produced is in game soundtracks currently. It's really and original, because there's a lot of them, obviously, because they're not bound by the like the vocal aspect. They're almost always instrumental.
Yes.
There's so much room to do, like, your melody is going to be the voice in the song, so you can do so much with that. Like so you were saying FTL. What's some other ones? I'm like dying to share the ones that I'm enjoying right now, but I want to hear your thoughts, because this is
Oh
a cool
yeah, absolutely.
specific.
Yeah, I think Faster Than Light is great because it's really like MIDI and kind of like I don't want to say like minimalist, but it's kind of stripped down, which
Yep.
is I mean that's what the game is visually as well. So,
Yep.
but it has like, this great substance. It's really cool, but kind of like digital space adventure. But another one that I really really love is from the original Last of Us,
Oh
Gustavo
yeah.
Santa. Oh, hold on, Santaolalla, I want to
All
say.
right. Yeah.
But it's basically all acoustic guitar with some other like classical acoustic with some background stuff. But it's so cinematic and beautiful with just
Mm-hmm.
that instrument. It's one of my all-time favorite pieces of music, not to mention like a game score.
Yeah.
That's one
It's.
that I'd recommend. Another one was Red Dead Redemption, the original.
Oh
I
really?
haven't listened to the second score that much, but the original score I've listened to quite a bit. And yeah, those three are like my go-tos for game score, I'd say.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've really what was the one I've been enjoying recently? Disco Elysium
Oh
is
yeah.
it's amazing, incredible atmosphere. And I don't know, it's like it's all, I think like we go in cycles, like there's summer tunes and there's winter tunes. The setting in it is quite wintry, in this like kind of alternate future world, uh like Russian feeling kind of thing to it. And it just like matches now when I like walk outside. The music is so appropriate for like this time of year. I've been loving that. And actually, they've got a lot of cred right now because they released their game. Is it called like Giant Games or something? They're like their new game's called Hades.
Oh, yes, yes.
Super Giant game.
Supergiant?
Yeah, yeah,
Supergiant, yeah.
I think. And they like historically, I think it's the same composer they've had too. That he like is stuck with them. It's it's I think it's considered an indie studio. Um, and he just does this like again like cool mixes of like electric guitar with acoustic guitar, really
Yes.
almost like he has like a sort of like Western rock
Yes.
infused feeling to it that like is cool because often they're fantasy settings, so you get this like cool fantasy Western feel to the stuff that they make. Like just incredibly original, really, really, really cool stuff. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I was actually going to bring up, I thought I was rambling, so I like kind of cut it off, but I was going to bring up Bastion as well, which
Oh,
is one
that
of my original favorite soundtracks.
okay. There you go. That's what I was. And it lends its in that game though. I guess it's kind of cool because that game was famous for its narrator, right? That's another super giant
That's right.
thing in the past. Is
That's
like
right.
they have a narrator in it. Um, what is it?
It's almost like
Transistor.
Sam Elliott, like some kind of like cool, like old cowboy guy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Exactly. Oh,
So that
that's
really
cool.
The Western vibe really fit. On that same note, I think StarCraft 2 had a really great score, which it kind of had that same aesthetic of like the Western kind of cowboy mentality, but in space or in fantasy. I thought they
Yes.
did a really good job on that soundtrack too.
No, there. It's such good music. Such good music. Worth exploring. Oh man. Oh, that's cool.
How about yourself, man? What have you been listening to, whether music or podcast?
Well, the podcast has been I was listening to because actually I think on your recommendation you told me to check out Your Mama's House. Um
Oh
and
yeah.
it's exceptional. They got a great like rapport between the two of them, like Segura and his wife. They're really really funny. And kind of like you just said, it's cool like you see different guests come on and then you'll gravitate towards like different guests that come on and you branch out in different directions. And somebody I've been like enjoying much more is like Bert Kreischer. How do you say
Oh
his name?
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. Yep. The
He
Machine.
the machine, and he's so as a character study, he's so pure in a way. There's like a it's I wouldn't say like a childlike innocent to Bert, but there's just like it's like he sees the world so purely comedically, and he's almost like a sort of stream of conscious kind of humor that just like keeps bubbling out of him. But it's really funny to me because I can see as well there's like a wall for Bert where it's like there's just a topic that it just doesn't exist in his world, and I think it's kind of a beautiful world that he exists in because they're often anything like more serious, like you just can't go near at all. And I love how he like just spouts absurdities that like whether they're caught or not by Tom, like they just keep the flow of their conversation going so well. Like they'll just start talking about like what was he saying? They got into a conversation. He's like, I really thought the other day about how you'd have to jack off another dude. I was like, what? This is really what Bert's thinking about? And he's like, yeah, because you'd have to get behind him if you wanted to do it
That's right.
properly because from the front would be so awkward. And it's like just so like I say, it's spontaneous and it just cracks me up. That's like I've been putting that on and going for runs, and I'm just like at this steady state of smiling the whole run because it's so like distractingly random that like there's not you
Yeah.
keep getting caught like what did Bert just say. um so and
Oh,
that
oh yeah, totally.
and their one is what is it, two bears one cave. You also recommended that one to me, right?
I may have. I definitely do listen to that. I think, yeah, it's a hard thing these days to kind of to take life seriously in the sense that like there are things that we ought to take seriously, and being respectful towards people's sincerely held beliefs is like a really important mission. And I think opening our awareness to encompass more kinds of people
Mm-hmm.
in the world and sort of being respectful towards all of them. That's a really important mission to grow as a human. But at the same time, like pure irreverence when accepted, not like the letter of the law, but the spirit of the law. Like people like you mentioned, like Bert or Tom, for instance, I feel like they're just pure comedy. Like they don't want to hurt anyone, but they see the funny in everything and they point out the funny in everything. And some of those topics are like really like, sort of like the woke bit of you hears like Bert start to talk about a theme or like a topic and you're like, oh, don't, oh, dude, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. But then it's like, it's actually really good that he does. And like you mentioned, it's like, it's a simple kind of extension and he's not doing anything to hurt anyone. He's just finding the funny and stuff. But again, yeah, like even that point about like you got to jerk off a dude and then you're thinking about and you're like, well, he makes a good point actually.
That's what cracked me up. I was like, he's dedicated like actual reason, some good reasoning to this, and it's the most random thing in the world. Yeah, I like that. It kind of reminds you, like you're saying, people are going to have their deeply held beliefs, but to never forget like the spirit of things that often like what is offending us is ourselves. If you you've got to take a person on case by case, that if they're going to say something absurd, how do they mean it? Like this is how like comedians, nothing is sacred. They're able to like remind us that it's more the way in which we're interpreting things. If people are just making observations or being generally, just like making light of life. I don't know. And I like recently too, like the stuff that I make, it can sometimes, venture. Everybody's got like an element of themselves where they're like, that's me being genuine, but then you kind of get sick of yourself. You want to do something new. And I I almost feel like I'm just too often too serious. And so listening,
I see. Yeah.
Listening to these things, I'm like, yeah, screw it all, whatever. Like, just laugh about the dumbest, most random thing. Treat nothing as sacred. Just lighten up a little bit. Like, I think that's important to do, to like just keep yourself never too high in the ivory tower that you lose perspective on things. Like just be goofy, be dumb, enjoy the lighter things. On that note, my thing I was going to say from Bert was, have you seen, it's a new show. I didn't watch all the episodes, but the couple that I did were like really cool. They're very pure Bert hilarious. It's called The Cabin.
No, I've not seen that.
Okay, so on Netflix, it's Bert's show that is basically, he's talking about like how crazy busy he is, everything like that. And so he needs to get some balance in his life, so he goes out to the cabin. And he's invited in different people like Tom Segura and like other comedians that he has in. And there's this, who was it? It was this Asian guy who used to be on Mad TV apparently. And he has a podcast called Tiger Belly. And I think that's the name.
Is it Bobby Lee?
Yeah. I'm almost certain it's Bobby Lee. And yeah, he had Bill Burr on there recently. And yeah, it was just like, they got into some hilarious things, which I feel like something I'm curious about this in different people, right? The different things that make people laugh, like to try and understand them, because, humor is like a unique thing, much as we might share it. Like Segura likes really, really like violent stuff, You know what I mean?
He does seem to, be a naked sociopath. Yeah, no, he does seem to love that shit.
And so I was like watching that, and they were just getting into the conversation of like this sort of thing now where, people talking about like what they had access to in their phones nowadays as compared to like the whole mission that if somebody wanted to find like the most risque thing was like a Playboy before, but how that's like gone on from, something like trying to find naked girls to like this sort of gore stuff that's on the internet. And just like, I don't know, like how I've never ever wanted to see that. It actually, maybe it's because it affects me too much. Like I see that stuff and I can't get the humor in it, but I want to understand Tom. And I think I kind of do. Like often there's like, there was one where it was some guy got like, hit by a car, and it's like the particular type of scream that the guy has, like when he gets hit, that like it just
Oh
puts,
no.
yeah, it puts Segura into
Oh
like
no.
stitches. Yeah, again, like
Yeah, yeah, right, right.
really embodying the whole like nothing is nothing is sacred kind of thing. But yeah, definitely enjoying the lighter side of things on the podcasts, and but
Well, yeah, I
yeah.
mean, it's tricky because that kind of stuff, like you said, that really affects me too. I can't watch it. I think maybe just having like skateboarded and
Oh
snowboarded,
right.
played rugby for so much of my life where you just get injured really badly a lot. Like I take no joy in seeing other people getting hurt.
You just know it. You're like, I
Espe-
know what that's like.
Oh, I know the feeling. And you know the feeling going into it sometimes where either you're completely confident and you have the exact right mentality that you need to like
Hmm.
successfully do the thing and
Hmm.
you still wipe out and eat shit. Um, or it's like that lack of confidence that does it, where you're kind of like not totally sure, but you're pushing the envelope and you eat shit and you know it's coming. And either way, it's a nightmare for me. I don't want to relive any of that. So I take no joy in that. But the idea of taking I don't like finding the humor or surrendering to the reality of anything, no matter how truly deeply dark or shitty it is.
Hmm.
I think like that's a pretty deep philosophy in a sense, or it can connect to a deeper philosophy that we should really aspire to, which also connects back with not holding things as being too sacred. Like never be too precious because the universe will find a way of cracking your really rigid and precious and sacredly held view by doing something to you or around you.
Mm.
And so I think it's like there is some real depth to that. It's not just as simple as being some goofball who just laughs at people getting hit by vans that and then screaming. Um, I mean, maybe there is that. Maybe it is just that simple. But at the same time, I think that learning to be able to accept the truth of things. And sometimes the truth is those things are hysterical. Like if you got if some guy got like catapulted off of a cliff, and he flew through the air real funny, that might be really funny, even though it's obviously a tragedy.
Right.
No one's like laughing at that person, poor person's themselves or their family who has to then suffer the loss. It's just like objectively that was pretty hilarious. Like we make cartoons that mimic that because they're hilarious. I don't know.
No, I completely agree. It's like I think it's what you can find there is, or I feel like you're touching on there. It's almost like a sense of humility with your own tragedies that you get from that kind of thing. Where if you can laugh at the guy who's flying through the air to like smack into the side of a building, then maybe you can see the humor when it's your turn, and you like get
Yeah.
thrown into it and you don't take it so personally, so you get by it more easily. Um, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's true. And I think that is the truth of it that we all love to avoid, which is that it's coming for all of us. And we like to avoid that or block it out or just not talk about it. But the truth is darkness exists in the universe and it's coming for us, and our attitude towards that could be,
Mm-hmm.
are we going to be humble in the face of, are we going to laugh in the face of that? Or are we going to be really precious about it and try and resist it or ignore it? And I think that there's folly in all of those different paths, but I think that my personal take is let's laugh about it instead.
Yeah, I think, well, it'll take you a lot farther than getting all hung up on everything. Okay, cool. Let's take a short break for a word from our sponsors. And the podcast has no sponsors, so that'll be really, really fast. We'll be right back.
Hello.
Hello again. We made it. Part 2 of the Interstice podcast. So, humor in our folly. That's probably really, really important. I could do with a little bit more of that. Um, how are things in Kyoto right now for the extended group? How's Robin doing?
Oh, Robin's doing great. Yeah, I think everything's going pretty well here. Um, yeah, it's tricky. We're kind of evaluating for next year and strategic direction for the company because, a lot of what we took for granted or had in mind when planning this company, you know, that reality isn't really here right now. It may come back, it may not. So we have to think of different things to do.
You didn't
Um,
consider a worldwide pandemic in your business plan?
no, no, I know. It's I know.
How foolish of you.
I
Uh,
know. I know.
but would we be able to at all? I know it's like very very tentative, but talk about the second location possibly.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that has been something that's been on my mind for a while. I think it way too early for any details because it's
Yeah,
still
sure.
casting a pretty wide net. But yeah, definitely thinking about expansion of Garden Lab to a new location.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, and I think it really fits in with our sort of our ethos of, you know, offering more decentralized um, infrastructure for people. Like it doesn't need to be basically to be successful or to be provide a good service. You don't need a gigantic tower building
Mm-hmm.
by a really big train station. You know, you can actually have these decentralized sort of small nodes in sort of like a lattice around the city, which each of the little nodes offers something slightly different at smaller scale. And that's really the goal of Garden Lab. I think that's what we've been trying to do already. And so expanding that to new locations is sort of the goal. And
So
there's plenty of places. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, no, no. You go ahead. You go ahead.
Oh, okay, yeah, I was going to say there's plenty of places like for those of folks who have seen the videos before that Dave's made, you'll know that we're kind of in an old macchia that was
Mm.
renovated. And that's really what I'm interested in is the old macchia. But actually, at the same time, it's not necessarily limited to macchia. For instance, if we were considering expanding to Tokyo or some other cities, there aren't as many macchia left. So it would be more
Mm.
like renovating an older building from like maybe Showa period, but it wouldn't be like a wooden structure probably. It would be like a, you know, a concrete, steel reinforced concrete structure that has maybe gone past its prime, but we would breathe new life into it. That's really the essence of it. So, you know, not looking only at Macchia going forward, but also looking at some of these old cool buildings that have a bit of flavor, a bit of character. And that's definitely in the cards for next year and maybe the year following would be different cities, different kinds of buildings, but the common thread would be reusing older things that still have lots of value that maybe's been forgotten or overlooked for a little while.
Definitely. Yeah. I think that speaks to a really cool mindset, which is basically don't get tunnel vision. Like, when I think about something, like you just made the point where it's cool. Garden Lab, like so far, it's like about these beautiful wooden structures. It's about Kyomachiya. It's about that, like, very, you know, Japan style of thing. But the underlying essence of that is this like small scale personal just cool buildings repurposed into something interesting, so you don't have to be married to that one architectural idea. It could be something else, which then, create a positive feedback loop. Maybe you learned something when you guys did another location that would make sense in Amachia, where you're like, oh, but we only realized that because we dealt with this other style of buildings, which then gave us an idea back here.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. That's totally true. And it one thing that we've already been seeing a little bit of is, I mean, I think I tried to do that a little bit with Garden Lab on the first floor, was making it less like a macchia, more like kind of a, what's the word? Like more of a regular building where you come in with your shoes. There's no like raised floor. There's no tatami mats on the first floor. It's all, you just walk in as though it's outside.
Mm-hmm.
Um, applying those sorts of lessons back to the macchia, but then also taking macchia lessons into a more contemporary building would be really, really cool as well. Like having a tatami room or a horigotatsu or something like that.
What was that
Kind of
last one
mixing
for the Horigotatsu? Did you say?
horigotatsu. Yeah, yeah. Horigotatsu is it's like the lowered or sort of like the sunken table where you can dip your
Oh,
feet into
okay.
like the hole underneath the table and you
Which
can
is
get a
cool.
heater under there. It's really
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
cozy.
All right.
Yeah, but things like that where you can kind of mix and match some architectural themes.
Oh, that's cool. Do you and of course you're still out there each day doing the gardening, yeah?
Yes, sir. Yep, just this morning, raked up a bunch of leaves. It's truly beautiful. I really wish you could see it. I'll send a photo to you after. But right, so our tree's like over 100 years old. I mentioned in the intro, it kind of goes later than other trees. So it was green up until last week,
Mm.
and then now it's like a bright yellow with some red. Um, whereas a lot of other places have already dropped all their leaves.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of cool because it's like it's mottled, if that's the right word. It's like red drips on the yellow leaves. And so if you look at each leaf, it's not really it doesn't look that good. It's not like the pure crimson color that you'd like.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at the overall, it's a really, really beautiful effect. So I've been digging that every morning doing the cleanup. It's a really nice canvas to look at.
Man, that's so cool. It's like this is something. I mean, talking about other things that I've thought were cool. I just like randomly found it's a super popular video and turns out channel on YouTube, but it's called My Self Reliance, and
Interesting.
it's basically this dude who, I mean, he's got his day job or whatever, corporate thing that he does in a city, but he's in Eastern Canada, lives in Toronto, and he's gone out into the woods and he builds a cabin, and he like chops down all the trees for it. He then builds like adjoining structures, and it's all like, like woodworking, practical, very, very material. And I like that kind of materiality, which I feel like I'm still messing around with, even with something that's digitized, like I mess around with, but it's something different when it requires that physicality from you. And man, the video is the coolest thing in the world. It's like, it's massive amounts of footage that he's taken. It's basically no speaking, and it's just like all these like beautiful shots of him going about creating things. And it's something, I mean, I get it a bit when I actually physically go out and film, because then I feel like there I'm working with my hands, I'm working with the camera. But I like, just that's why I brought up the gardening for you, because it's like I feel like that's something I could use more of in my life. There's something that's like deeply tangible and material. I guess when I film more, I'll be getting more of a chance to do that kind of thing. But like I don't know if it's funny. I was gonna say maybe this is like more a thing for like guys, but then I was like, actually it's not. Like a lot of women, they're very crafty, right? Like women actually, whether it's like crochet or knitting or gardening, like actually women do this sort of material thing a lot. Like I guess it's more basically human thing to do. But the I thought the gardening, that you have that garden to look after, is very cool.
Oh yeah, it's a tremendous source of well-being for me. And yeah, I would say like Robin, for instance, other staff member at Garden Lab,
Mm-hmm.
she's one of the most material people I've ever met. She's made these like lovely cushions for the seats at the bar. She made the curtains for Garden Lab. Like she's incredibly skilled at that kind of work, and it's inspiring to me because I'm really shit at that. Like I
Okay.
can break stuff, I can carry stuff,
Yep.
I
Yep.
chop trees, but like I can't make anything. So that's always really inspiring to me to see that. But yeah, no, I think there's something really to that. I was having a great conversation with a monk. We're gonna do a session at Garden Lab sometime, but
Mm-hmm.
essentially we were talking about the necessity of cleaning and how that's a meditative practice in Buddhism. Certainly Japanese Buddhism. I don't want to speak about other Buddhism because I'm really ignorant, but I know in Japanese Buddhism at least, part of the monastic tradition was they'd clean the temple every day, and that was part of the essential practice of spiritual development. And I can really see that. So I was talking to him about that because I've found days where I do the cleaning in the garden versus days where I don't. There's a marked difference there.
Yeah, man.
But that's really cool, man. I'm gonna check out that channel. I think I harbor very I mean, not so secret fantasies about doing that same kind of thing in the future, like hiking out into the woods, getting a plot of land, cutting trees, turning it into something. That's a deep fantasy of mine that I've held for a long time.
Oh, it's so cool, man. And it's like it's the man and he's got his dog. It's like a big friendly golden lab, and it's clearly having the time of its life. It's like really fulfilling like the essence of its being, which is to be this loving, kind of gentle companion that just follows around its master. it's like a really like true like like purposeful thing, you know, where you're like this his whole like just to build and to, you know, be so self-sustained in everything that he's doing. It looks like this, you know, talk about like the meaning of life, like just he's kind of in the Tao. He's just existing, you know, he's just like going about, and I can see how there'd be so much fulfillment from that, let alone to watch it is an incredibly peaceful thing. Like, I mean, maybe he says something every like 10 or 15 minutes, which is just like him telling his dog to come inside the cabin or something like that. But you're absolutely wrapped, you know, like it completely is engrossing. That's the word I'm looking for. And I was like, it's also cool too, because it's one of these like long format things, which is so often everybody's like, no, the attention span of people, you got to hit them with this, and this. And although I think at the highest level of mass consumption that may be true, but this guy is as popular, if not more popular, than a lot of different forms of, you know, creation that are out there for people to consume. And it's like watching an hour-long silent film. Where you're like, you know, what a kind of weird full circle that comes. You know, it's trippy.
That's really cool. I will definitely take a look at that. That sounds right up my alley.
Yeah. That's what I was wondering. I was thinking about other things that you do, because you do the gardening. Is there any other sort of physical thing like that you do?
I mean, not so much lately. I've been trying to get out and do some boxing. That's been really cool.
Oh yeah, that's okay. Let's talk about that. So that's like you and Mihao, who will be featuring more on the channel and the podcast and everything, I'm sure. Dear friend in Kyoto. Does he have a background in mixed martial arts? I feel like he does.
Yeah, so both Mihao and Sandro are both have backgrounds in fighting. I want to say Mihao did karate and Sandro did taekwondo, I want to say, but both of them were at a very high level. They're
Okay.
both competitive fighters when they were younger. I think Sandro was like junior Olympian for the
Huh.
US.
Okay.
And Mihao was certainly competitive. I think he came to Japan originally for that. But anyway, yeah, no, I wouldn't say mixed martial arts, but
Okay.
you know, I did judo before.
Oh,
Uh,
right.
so yeah, I did judo and kendo. Mihao did karate and I think kendo as well, or judo as well. And then Sandra did taekwondo and maybe something else. So like we all have some background in that. I say we all as though I'm not a pile of shit. Those guys are really good. But anyway, so it's kind of like I'm tagging along with those guys who are good at fighting.
Yeah.
But it's been amazing, man. It's definitely something I've missed having in my life.
And are you
And
guys
yeah,
still
I've
sorry?
realized I've never learned how to throw a punch at all. So that's
Okay.
been really cool to like start from square one. And it's interesting because Sandra, who's such a skilled fighter, he's learning how to punch as well in a different way, which is he's so reliant on throwing those like life ender kicks from Taekwondo that
Okay.
learning how to exclusively punch is like a completely different skill set. So that's been a challenge for him, but he's obviously like a murder machine. So it's been cool to watch and be a part of. Yeah, a great workout as well.
So, and like it sounds, again, it's something it's combat or whatever, but like the actual, you guys are like going down to the Kamigawa. Is that where you're doing this like outdoors, right? Not necessarily at the gym. You're like grabbing pads and going somewhere.
Yeah, so it's we've been doing it right, I would say. Because it's, you know, as you get older and you have less time for stuff, it's like we have one night a week to really make this happen. So we've been going around to different parts of town, and what we'll do is we'll meet up after work, we'll cycle up to a park or a mountain or a river or something that has a light. We'll get the pads out, we'll do a full solid workout there, the three of us, and then from there we'll hit a Sento
Oh
and then
yeah.
grab a bite to eat after that. So it's kind of like a full evening of taking care of ourselves. But yeah, it's really cool, man. And as a result, we've kind of reconnected with parts of town that we haven't been to for a long time, or finding new spots. So it's kind of like adventure, combat, health, relaxation. It's a really, really good thing.
That's a cool cycle. Yeah. And I like the you know, I'm like I run and I go to the gym, but I mean, just to incorporate different stuff, like I don't know, because I feel like you're always at this battle of efficiency works against you in terms of self development in some way. It's weird. It's this like balancing act you're always doing. Where a classic example in the gym is that once you develop, one of the first things you have to do, say for example, you're doing like, I found this cool exercise off Instagram recently where you've got what is it, a bench, and you would lie like you would go perpendicular to the bench with like one of your shoulders on the bench and one of your shoulders off, and then with the shoulder that's off you're doing a chest press with a free weight. And
Oh, okay.
when you do that, it's actually an incredible core exercise because you need to like tighten your core to like make that arm come up at the same time. You realize that so much of your movement is assisted by your entire body when you do that. And when you're first doing it, it's incredibly demanding, and so much of what's difficult about it is that you don't have the neural pathway of the movement. But then
Yeah.
once you get an economy of movement, you're getting way less in terms of development out of the action physically, because now your body's efficient at doing the action. You don't gain as much in terms of like physical growth. Like and I mean that in a literal sense. Like your core won't develop as much because it's so good at doing it. So
Yeah.
doing like a variety of things means, I mean, the classic, they just call it like muscle confusion, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And so like if you were going to compete in like a boxing match, if you're going to fight somebody, obviously you want that economy of movement to keep a large reservoir of energy left over to keep going. But in terms of your personal challenge and growth, you sometimes want to actually, the more inefficient you are is better. So like finding these, these alternative forms of working out is awesome. And you need somebody like it's an easy thing when I'm only doing a lot of this stuff solo, that I don't think to go out and do something different like that. Although one thing I tried recently, I don't know if you've ever done this before, I've been doing it a bit more at the gym, is the battle ropes. You know those things?
Oh, yeah, I've heard of them. I've not done it yet, but I've heard it's a real nightmare.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Like, and it was cool. I've always seen them in the gym, and I was like, that always looks so cool when like I've seen The Rock doing that or whatever. And we got on to, myself and the couple of friends that I go with there. We've been trying that out, and it's actually it's a ton of fun in the way that it's like murderously difficult, but maybe one of the best examples of you become increasingly efficient with your movements, and so you got to work like harder and harder and harder to get a final result of it. But really, 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 just fun to do, just like to get that
Yeah,
variety.
that's super cool, man. I'd love to check that out. I think one thing that we're gonna do, or sort of I've been advocating for, is in addition to just the boxing, which I mean, as I mentioned, we kind of like ride bikes
Mm-hmm.
for like a good few Ks. Then we do a bunch of boxing.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not actually punching pads or holding pads, you're like doing push-ups and stuff. So it's a complete workout.
Mm-hmm.
But aside from doing that routine, I'm also going to try and get us doing some bouldering as well. Get back into that
Oh, that's cool.
because that's a pretty thorough full body thing as well. And I think that would kind of, yeah, it would be confusing enough to go
Yeah.
from like impact to then to that. It's a completely different movement. But yeah,
And
overall, just shred you.
pull, right? It's like it's a
Yeah,
pull exercise, like so much for your back, because everything
yeah,
is clinging to things and pulling up onto things. Like there's another part, like just to increase the overall symmetry of your development. That's like
yeah.
that's going to hit that part of it. Um, whereas with the punching, that's like press, I suppose. Um,
Well, but that's the funny thing. Actually, it's kind of not.
okay.
I mean, there's definitely that element, but
Mm-hmm.
pulling is super critical. So, like, if you're just doing a single punch,
Mm-hmm.
then yeah, for sure, like the press is probably the dominant motion.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're chaining together, almost more of your power comes from the hand you've thrown with. So if you throw a jab with your left,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're locking into your to throw your right straight as like your power punch, you actually generate a lot of power from pulling your left hand back. So actually snapping that left hand back with a strong pull, pivoting, and then converting that into a press
Hmm.
is
Yeah.
like where you get a lot of your power from. So it's kind of a sneaky assisting boxing workout would be to be doing some bouldering.
Yeah, man, that's a great point. Yeah, there's so much, right? Like, and even like the subtlest movement that you have is like gonna like, I mean, in terms of like, say your technique, I guess, like when you pull
Yeah.
back, pulling like at this angle or this degree is gonna mean that like this whole side of your body is gonna tense or whatever. But if you moved your elbow down slightly, now it's all about this particular part of your body instead. And it was like a 5 degree angle change in what it was that you were doing. Um,
Yeah.
that's changing everything about that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, man. It's a really elegant motion actually boxing is. So it is cool. We've been another thing is I used to watch fights and stuff sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
As you can relate to being from Canada, it's not always we don't always get the channels or it's like not on the right time or something. So you have to kind of wait for ESPN classics to show like a classic bout.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or we used to at least. Now it's on YouTube, I'm sure. But anyway, yeah, I watch fights sometimes, and but they'd be like, yeah, a classic fight maybe. But now I've been reviewing a lot more footage of our own because we'll like record it all too. So we
Yeah,
record it
yeah,
and then
that's cool.
review to kind of point out where we're making mistakes and where we could develop. But then also watching other fights just more commonly and seeing somebody who's good at boxing, it's fucking beautiful, man. It's a really really elegant and it is a complete mix of elegance and power. So it's really appealing, I think. You can see why boxing has such what's a wide following, maybe, of different kinds of people, I would say.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, it's like all these things, right? The I'm sure the more that you understand of that, then like you said, it's more beautiful because you know what's going on, as opposed to the untrained eye. Like I'm looking at that like a Goomba, where I'm like he punches again and then he punches again. Like you see no separation between the type of punch or like the amount of power. It's like all punches look like hard punches, or
Yeah.
like you can't see that there's like combinations that are occurring and all that stuff. No, that's very
Yeah.
cool. I wanted to
Yeah.
ask you about. Sorry, go ahead.
No, no, no. I was just gonna say, which is why, like, did you watch the Tyson Jones fight or like the Jake Paul versus Nate Robinson fight recently? That was like a
I,
big thing.
I saw less of the Tyson and more of the Paul one against Robinson, which was
Yeah.
it really was a kind of like Roman spectacle, like
That,
this
that's
is
yeah, that's right.
it's like
That's what I was gonna say. Like, so I've been like quote unquote boxing. I've been punching pads for like what is it, fucking weeks now or something, I guess. I don't know. A
Mhm.
couple of months maybe, let's say. Few months. And I'm really into it, but at the same time, it's like once twice a week kind of thing. And even I'm like, these guys fucking suck at boxing. Like, how are they in the Staples Center? This is insane. Take down YouTube, take down social media. These people should not be like occupying this much of our mental real estate. But it was funny. I was happy to
uh,
watch it or whatever. But yeah,
yeah, and like I got and they had like Snoop Dogg was announcing the thing. It was so entertaining where I was like, you're obviously on paper you would write what are they doing, and the Observer would write boxing, but I was like, it's much
yes,
more than that that's happening here.
yes,
It's like this whole, you've released like the snakes and lions into the arena, and now they're just gonna like shed blood, and it's gonna be
yeah,
random as all hell, but that are lusting after this kind
yeah,
of like
yeah.
excess is woo, you get caught up in it. Like the guy who was against, I didn't follow any of this. When I saw that it happened, I was like, okay, this is novel. Like
Yeah, yeah,
they're
yeah,
they're gonna do this, are they?
yeah.
And just to, I can't imagine where it seems so one-sided, where like I don't know, it's Jake Paul, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But clearly he had taken seriously training for it and had like I at least as much as I could, like a semi-professional approach to the thing. Or I was like, yeah, the guy, like, he looks like he's in great shape, And for the untrained eye, I'm like, it looks like he's doing things that resemble somebody who's boxing or been trained, whereas the other guy was just pure like bar fight. He was like just charging him, like not protecting
with
himself, leading with his, and he jabs with his face, like that.
That's right. Yeah.
This
thrust his chin out triumphantly. Yeah.
And I mean, it almost in that way made it into a better show, because you're like, oh, it's too boring when you have two professionals, because they're assessing each other, and it's very difficult to land shots. But
yeah,
they were just brutalizing that. I want to say that poor guy, but then at the same time, I was like, dude, what were you doing? Like,
he initiated it. Apparently, he like called him out or something, and it ended up happening.
And you do not look like. I mean, you look fit. You definitely look fit, but I was like, you don't look like you trained at all with a coach. Like, did you do any boxing training for this, or were you out doing like ninja training? Where you were like, running upstairs and like preparing for the obstacle course. That was
that was the vibe that I got too, where and I would say even for Jake Paul too, like he's obviously in shape, he's obviously like a powerful guy, like there's no question about that to me, but like there was like the fundamentals, like, and again, I'm a fucking beginner, like I have no place commenting on anybody's skill, but it's like the fundamentals of like, keep your guard up, like if you throw a punch, be ready to get counterpunched, or be ready to counterpunch yourself, or anything. Like, the most basic fundamentals were like not on display at all. Whereas like, okay, well, you're strong and you're fit. I applaud that for sure, but fucking come on, guys. Like, did you go, like, were the trainers just happy to get the payday, or what? Like, yeah.
It was...
But then I think it was outdone by his post-fight commentary, where he's like calling out Joe Biden on Twitter. He's like, "What's up, Joe Biden? You little bitch! Put your gloves up. Let's get in the ring." Right. Just like, I admire your commitment to the troll, but you're a fucking pile of shit. I hope someone beats you up really badly.
He definitely he was taking like a little bit of like the Conor McGregor.
That's right.
That style, like that's the show, right? That's why I was like, you cannot deny they succeeded in entertainment. This like entertained people, created a hilarious narrative. I don't think necessarily that this was some like brilliantly like played Machiavellian, then pumping up more attention afterwards. But I was like, whether intended or not, this is a brilliantly executed piece of entertainment that will probably sustain him as a kind of career now for the next, half a decade. He's gonna.
Oh, absolutely, man. Yeah. No, he's a great heel. I'll definitely say that.
Right.
Because it's like, it's the classic. I mean, I don't want to compare Jake Paul and fucking Muhammad Ali, but that's like where the playbook got written, was Ali being like, yeah, I talked a lot of shit, and white people wanted to see me get beat up, so they'd all come to the fights, and then I'd laugh all the way to the bank, ha ha ha. And it's Brilliant. Like, yeah, I would love to see Jake Paul get the shit kicked out of him. I'll go to that fight. Like, it's a classic heel move, and he plays it well. So,
yes, savagery and spectacle. I wanted to, we're talking about this, like doing things more physically, it's like the positive side of materialism, that kind of thing. You know our old Canadian boy Tom Green, yeah?
Oh yeah.
So. This is actually, and it goes right back to what we were talking about before, about seeing people on podcasts and then being like, yeah, that dude's doing pretty cool. I wonder what he's up to. So I basically saw him on Joe Rogan's podcast, and they have like a huge history where Tom Green actually was doing kind of some of the first long format podcasting, which inspired Rogan, but he was doing it out of his house and with like not the technology. He like, basically it's like, Tom Green missed he was too ahead of his time, which is like interesting. Right. Except now, after he went on that episode, he got inspired to set up like a studio in his house and do it again and do a YouTube channel. And surprise, surprise, I mean, he got a big bump from being on Rogan in the first place, but that started to boom for him. And then he's bought himself a van. He's tripped out the whole thing with like solar panels and so on and so forth, and he's got himself a little companion in this like pot cake dog or something it's called. It's I'm not sure. It's like a rescue, like Mexican rescue dog or something like that. I'm not sure, but his channel now is like him going around America right now through all these like desert areas, making music, like all this kind of cool electronic ambient stuff, and journaling, not like vlogging his like journey through these like, you know, these untouched beautiful places in America right now. And
Of course he is. He's a genius. That's amazing. That sounds like such a great concept, and yeah, that's fucking cool, man.
and I liked it too because it's this sort of like I was saying about the whole like my self-reliance thing. It touches on like just the ways in which people, I mean, granted, this is a guy with a lot of money. He's like wealthy, and so he can build for himself like this van and then, you know, tour around and not have to worry about stuff. But like also nowadays, if you work for it, the kind of like I like a word that I'm really liking these days. I first heard people talk about it with the new Red Dead Redemption. I was like, no, but that's a word you could use for a lot of stuff, is like emergent. And I like emergent lifestyles that are occurring now, where it's like just the different ways in which people can live are like becoming totally different now. Granted, as I say, he's got this money, but I liked it. It was kind of like this return to, well, at the same time being complex. He's got this like crazy van or whatever, but it's very simple. It's just him and his dog. And then he's now been able to take all of his passions and make them perfectly nomadic. Or I was like, that's just, you know, is just the coolest thing in the world. And it's like how these lifestyles, almost like in science, you're seeing all things are merging towards like similar paths, where there's some element of biology that's found in physics, and physics is found in everything. And so we see all of these like scientific paths merge, but also in a way, like whether you like it or not, our like our existence is becoming as well. And it's where what sustains us, what entertains us, what connects us is all becoming the same thing. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I think that maybe I think emergent is a great word. I was kind of just ruminating on that actually.
Yeah.
But definitely like sort of the emergent, or maybe not emergent, like it's better actualization or realization of our whole potential as people, maybe, or I should say that those of us who are doing that. I don't consider like I'm doing that yet. I definitely am aspiring to be
Oh, I think you're doing that. Come on
a
now.
more well, I mean, I would say I'm on the path, but I'd say that I've got a ways to go still. You know, it's hard. I think to do that truly and wholly, you need to be able to overcome your fears or neuroses or patterns or programming that you have, sort of like the software that you've downloaded and are clinging onto. And it may be to be self-aware, to say that I recognize I still am holding on to a lot of that programming. So I don't think I'm quite there yet, but I'm definitely aspiring to be a more realized version of that, where, yeah, as you mentioned, sort of what it really comes back to what you mentioned before about sort of the dog, for instance, on that channel, living its purpose of being, it's just expressing itself wholly. It is being it in its most pure sense of a companion, and sort of like serving its master, but being there and being joyful and outside. Like, you know, nothing better than for a dog than to be outside with your buddy who's like your dad master guy, and you're doing cool adventure stuff, and there's all these smells and sights and sounds and stuff. So it's like living a very pure realization of its existence and purpose. But I think that as human beings, that's like maybe a bit more complicated.
Yes.
Based on all that programming and shit.
Yeah.
But I think we can get there. I don't think it's impossible. I think it's tricky, and I'm certainly aiming for that. But I'm like still cognizant of maybe just how much of that I'm still holding on to, where I'm like, no, just let it go and be the pure realization of your purpose, whatever that is. And maybe you don't need to define it. Maybe just doing it wholeheartedly is the purpose. And then the manifestations of what you do will result from that. I don't know.
No, I like,
but
yeah,
I
I
love
like
it,
that.
man.
I like that. Like, when you can, I guess it's like, it's never simple, but the way that you put that, it's when you do things wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
That's like when you're doing that, that's like step one. And then step two is that it can't be a vaguely appointed goal. If you're doing
Yes.
something wholeheartedly, usually tied up in that is that you're trying to accomplish something. Now, I feel like you cut down like really quickly into that easily when you're surviving, because then like survival becomes the point. Or I guess that's why when you do something like you build a home, that's the purpose. Your purpose is like, that's the thing. And so you get to it immediately. It's just, I think where people, myself included, where you're battling with this is where you're like dedicating yourself wholeheartedly to something that you don't feel any attachment to. Where you're like, and it's always, you're always going to bump up against this factor where you're like, how am I supposed to do this with all my heart and soul that I have, like, that I don't have an interest in? You know, because of course there's going to be a disconnect there where you're like, because your heart and soul doesn't connect to something like that, because you don't feel that, you know, that it's not even an end game. It's just like, it is that word purpose. Like, you know, but when you do, and I mean, I guess I look at it in some ways as it's come back to like it being a sort of like luxury where you don't always have to get that. And maybe, so say for example, your guy has got a family and he wants to feed his family and create a good life for them. So the thing that he goes in and commits wholeheartedly to, the way that he's found that purpose is the family, but the thing that he's actually doing, it wouldn't really be the end all, but because he's got such a purpose from his family that he feels or she feels very comfortable doing that. But then
that's right.
I see the best part of that is where they're indistinguishable in terms of how much they're a reward to you. You love doing that thing that then might be connected to another. It's like you increasingly, it's like you gain more purposes. You know, like and this is where I say it's like emergent might, in this sense, emergent would be like this new way that these merging parts of our lives that used to be separate come together. So the example I could give is like us doing the podcast today. So usually I would just like to have a great conversation with you, you know, catch up with an old friend. That's awesome. But then this is also something that could potentially sustain me, because it's something that's, you know, other people are going to connect with, that are then going to support me. Here's a great segue, that they might consider supporting me on Patreon. So if you've enjoyed the podcast so far, please consider doing so. And how all of these things start to become the podcast. I love to do that when I'm doing this. It's a purpose. But then to be able to sustain myself, that's another purpose. Then to make sure that you maintain good relationships with your friends, that's another purpose. And you get to enjoy all of that rich, deep, satisfying creamery butter. No, and if you do that, you're just happier. It's like, and it's something I find myself really, really frustrated. That's why I even brought up before the whole, like, when you can't feel really invested in what you're doing. And I mean, I battle with that at like the day job that I have where I'm teaching, where I wholeheartedly see how that's allowing me to pursue all these other things. And perhaps this is just me being like a whiny, petulant child, but I'm like, but it doesn't feel as directly involved. Like I want every action, every waking moment to be dedicated to the thing that feels like it is the purpose. The action that you're doing is something that you're deeply connected to. But then I'm maybe going back to what we're talking about, this sort of like comedy of it, is that's really, really short-sighted, because it's a luxury. I see so many people on social media that don't even have jobs now, and it's
Yeah.
like, so I should just smarten up and accept that, and it's totally fine. But maybe that's something I want to extend that to other people. Or like, I think if I could ever have a positive impact, is wake people up to, if they are actually just not existing in a good way. The people, this is the way I put it. Like we were talking about, you exist and that's good, but it's not just existing with your purpose, it's existing without the purpose, where you wake up and you don't, it's vaguely alive, where you like, you go in and you know that you need to eat, and so you know that you need a job, and so you do this and you do this and you do this, but you're literally pulled along by a current of no greater depth than, this is something that you can see right immediately in front of you, which allows you to continue to the next day. And unless we really think about that, then you can get stuck there for your entire life. And you want to talk about feeling like your time is wasted. I think that just happens to millions and millions and millions of people. So
I agree, but I want to like send a bit of a counterpoint into that, which is just to say that I think that is the purpose for a lot of people, and I'm firmly committing myself into this camp, which is I like, for instance, I've worked a ton of jobs that I derived very little satisfaction from a spiritual perspective, but I see now that having done that at that time was absolutely critical in me later along my path, making choices that were healthier for me in that moment, because I'd already experienced this other sort of detour down that sort of career path, and being like, oh, that's actually not a good fit for me. I thought it was. It seemed to kind of pull it that direction for me. It seemed like it was fulfilling a part of an aspect of my personality that connected to my purpose. And so I wanted to investigate that, but actually doing that as a job was actually very unhealthy for me. So great, I can close that door now. And then kind of later on in life, if that door kind of presents itself, I'm like, no, I know what lies beyond that. I don't need to explore that anymore. I'm more free to pursue what I'm doing already with less distraction. It's kind of like, it really serves that purpose in a sense. Sorry, I'm using purpose in like 4 different definitions, but let me kind of circle back, or try to. Just simply to say that whatever we're doing in that moment, that is our purpose. And so, I think it's very important for people to have no significance to life beyond, like you said, just existing until the next day, or not. Like, I think these are all critical human experiences and journeys that is the purpose of that person. And I think we can, just as much as we can get trapped in the quagmire of nothing or stagnating and not really developing ourselves beyond just an existence, let's say, we can also get stuck on the hamster wheel of like, I need to live with meaning every moment, and every moment must be pregnant with significance and beauty, and if not, then I'm a fucking pile of shit, and the gods of capitalism should grind me up because I ought to be filling my time with stuff. And you could substitute capitalism with art or philosophy or religion or whatever it is that you want to, or a social interaction or something. But I think that let's give a shout out to the purpose of no significance too, because maybe that's what the universe actually is, and it's equally fine. But as you say, like, I mean, certainly this is something I've taken from listening to you, watching your content, or just having conversations like this with you as a friend, is that you do cast a light on that, and you're a great beacon for people to maybe seek to break out of those traps of maybe insignificance. It doesn't mean quit your job and become a nomad. It might mean that, or it might mean just simply be more grateful for the time in your life that you get to create art or something, which is something that you've inspired me to do more of. And I think you've inspired a lot of people to do more of that. So I guess to chain it back, I would say support Dave on Patreon.
But you make it. I was trying to touch on it at the beginning, and it's like it's another thing here. The way that you put it, it's like, I get sick of always having to need this, like you just put it, like pregnant with meaning, and like, searching the depths of the universe. Or I'm like, oh, just like smile and shut the fuck up and just like have a light day where you're not obsessed with filling it with great purpose. And how that, like, if you become overly concerned with that, that you become pretentious, and you become
Yep.
aloof, and you have like bizarre, like, it's the sort of person who like thinks about the beauty of the world but never does anything because they're like
Yeah.
so lost in the consideration of it. Like, I'm reading Charlie Chaplin's autobiography right now, and there was this great line which I thought was like really cautionary for somebody like me, where it's like, just do the thing. You don't need to
Yeah.
talk about it all the time. Where he was talking about, it's like one sentence really, but it links into what you're saying, where he was talking about these people that he came in contact with while he's making these movies, and
Mm.
how this particular group kind of rubbed him the wrong way because they're somewhat pretentious and boring, and they kind of reeked of that tiresome word art. And I was like, oh,
Mm.
that's a great way to put it, right? Where he's like, I don't care about art. I don't care about like, the like obsessing over like what it actually is. Like, basically, abstracting what you're literally doing. Like, just sitting
Yes.
there and talking about the art of art. Where he's like, I just make movies and I want people to laugh. Like, and,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
if and if
Exactly.
and if
Exactly.
and if that does something cool, then that's cool. And if it is something more, maybe it is. I don't care. It's not my concern. My concern is to do the thing, not to talk about the thing. And
Hmm.
yeah, I really like that because, well, one, it'll get you through life a lot easier because you won't be constantly the like cliche tortured artist that's like, oh, but such wasted time, and this, like, this is only a week, like whatever flowery garbage, like overly verbose language you're going to use to like wax poetic about whatever it is that you're doing, that you put all that aside and you just do the thing. And that could be whether it is that you're trying to like make a movie, or if you're just doing your day job to pay your bills, where the person, like you said, they could just need to pay their bills, and that's
Yeah.
enough. And that's like, and as long as they're happy doing that, then all things being relative, that's totally enough. So
Exactly. And recognizing that that's where you are, and so choose to live that wholeheartedly and see and find significance and meaning for yourself in that, or don't, or choose to pursue something different that hopefully will hold more significance or meaning for you. But it might not either. Like it might just be a distraction itself. Like so, yeah, just being present with where you're at and who you are, I think is like a very noble thing, and it doesn't have to result in great output of creation or significance or art or philosophy. It could just be you're just a fucking cool dude for a while. Like that's that's pretty. I mean, that's a great person as far as I can tell. Is just like a kind of cool dude who's like kind to people and stuff. Like, yeah, we should all aspire to be more of that, maybe.
yeah, it's those characters, and I think like they're really well embodied, and it's cool characters in like an anime, and it's always the person, or in a movie, that they like, they're always the person that it seems like they know something that nobody else knows. They are privy to information about the meaning of life that they never tell anybody about, but that's made, or it seems apparent, in the fact that they just live their life.
Yes.
And you're like, what does that guy know? And it's not that he knows anything. He just lives his life, so he appears like he knows things. Like
Yes.
that he's content. So that's kind of the secret of the whole thing. Which is, it's just so important to avoid to not getting hung up and ruminating and overthinking. You're like, no, I do my thing, and that thing is enough.
Yeah.
Which is
And if it's not enough, then change it somehow or try.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Do you here is something I wanted to ask. Kyoto right now is, because of the pandemic, it's seen far less tourism, right?
Yes.
I saw some video where I was like, that's a cool video. I gotta, hats off to this, where somebody was talking about what are the impressions of the people living in Kyoto right now of the fact that there are so few tourists, and how do they feel about maybe that returning to how it once was. Like, what is your like, how do you feel like life has been since that? I'm sure it's far less busy. Like, and obviously you, for your business, you want tourism to be there and everything, but like, do you have mixed emotions about like the return to that? You must, because like, on the one hand it's good for business, on the other you probably enjoyed this brief hiatus where you weren't flooded by, so many people in the downtown.
Oh yeah, I would say that I think there's definitely a happy medium that could be found or a new balance that could be struck. But like, yeah, it's been wonderful. Obviously, for my business, there's an element that tourism helps, but honestly, it's more like domestic travel going back to normal would be better, because we're more of sort of a corporate facing entity in a lot of ways. So it's kind of like business travel would be great for us because we kind of provide services to those kinds of clientele. But tourism doesn't really help us. So on a very subjective personal level, fucking I am psyched. I need no tourism to come back ever. For the health of the economy here, I'd say like some more tourism would be great. Uh, but no, it's been in a lot of ways it's been really really wonderful. It's the original Kyoto that I discovered when I came in 2009 when it wasn't quite as hyperinflated. You can go to all of the hot spots, sort of like the main tourist sites or main areas, and you can walk around and you can experience it actually. You can actually find a bit of calm in those sites where they've been so overwhelmed with throngs and hordes of people for so long that it's like you would go there and it would be you could see what was cool about it, but you wouldn't get to experience any of that cool yourself because you'd just be more preoccupied with like the screaming tourist behind you taking selfies or like barging in front of you, like just the hot breath of like a thousand, I don't want to say souls because there wasn't a soul among them, but just like, yeah, obviously like my distaste for tourists is coming through a bit too harsh here, but no, it's just like people who are so concerned about like them, me, I'm on vacation, scream, scream, no attention to like what that's doing to the people around me kind of mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Like the influx of that, it can bring some money to the town, which is important, but like it's destroying the culture wholesale, just stripping it apart. So this year has been really great for that sort of tranquility, return to tranquility, which is, I would say, probably a lot of people's image of Kyoto, but surprisingly hasn't been for a long time. It's been really lovely to see that again. Um, I think that it's a great opportunity for Kyoto and the surrounding area to kind of consider what healthy tourism looks like, because for so long it's just been as many people as possible, as frequently as possible, and that's been really flexing the limits of the infrastructure in this town. So I think it's a good opportunity. I'm not super confident that or optimistic that that will actually happen. I think it's just going to be great. Cases are down. Okay, back again. So you see this like glut of hotels that are meaningless and shitty, destroying all of like the great cityscape. And believe me, you wouldn't know this from the tone of my voice. I'm actually an optimist, kind of perpetual optimist, but this
Yeah.
is like my pessimism coming through really clearly here. But it's been sort of a bubble for a while where all these like external investors would build hotels in Kyoto because of how many tourists were coming. And I hope sincerely that they all get their asses handed to them and they all go bankrupt. And then we can actually start rebuilding a decent city, because they, quite frankly, offer nothing to the town aside from more capacity for more people to come. And they're often not even located in Kyoto, so the money's actually not even staying here, beyond what some people pay for services, which I guess would be uh, should be supported, and I would hope for some more support for those people. But it's just like, with anything, whenever there's a bubble, the giant conglomerates from abroad or certainly not from local will have their hands in it and fill their own pockets before actually helping the community. So to summarize, it's been fucking sweet. I
Okay.
love it.
Hmm.
I don't want it to come back in the way that it was, and I hope that all the fat cats take a giant haircut on their valueless investments in this city.
Yeah, it's so interesting, right? Like there really is this opportunity always, like when a forest fire clears away the dead wood in a forest, like for some new thing. And I mean, I think that's true on like a global scale, right? Like there's so much, the world has an opportunity to do things differently coming out of this, and everybody in so many, like whether it's tourism or technology has or the way in which we research science, like has had a chance to be like, oh, we didn't necessarily have to do things like we did, because you see, like in some ways where you'd think it was a return to what's normal, but at the same time where maybe you were doing things before which you thought had to be that way, but you realize once they're gone that you're still here, that
Yeah.
apparently you didn't have to do it that way, because in this respect it's gone and we continued along. It's a really a brave new world in terms of like everything. I was just, yeah, I was so curious about the perspective there for Kyoto, because like you said, it was sort of, it's like a reset button that hit when you say it was like as similar as it was to 2009.
Yeah, it's been a really lovely reset. I hope that we'll learn from it. I think some people will learn from it, some will not, but I
Mm-hmm.
think that what will be sustainable in the future is different than what has been sustainable or had the appearance of being sustainable in the past. So I'm looking forward to the new future. I think it might be some rocky road ahead, but for the city, but I think it's overall it's been I think a lot of people have been reminded of how the city can be, and I think are pretty happy with that.
Oh, that's cool.
Looking forward
Interesting.
to hosting you here again soon, man. A couple of tall pints have your name on them.
I am excited. I'm excited. Well, on that note, thank you very much for coming on, Drew. You're a busy man, so I appreciate you setting aside the time to join us here today, and hopefully we can have you back again on in the not too distant future.
The pleasure is all mine, sir. I would love to come and spew ignorance and reduce the IQ of any of your listeners again soon. Thank you for indulging my uh, half thought out rants.
My pleasure. We'll definitely do it again. All right, that's all for
All right,
now.
brother. Take care, man.
Peace.
Much love to you. Bye.